the body's fascinating. Self-healing is fascinating.
Yeah.
So that's really how. And so I help people see that, like, okay, your arms, maybe they jiggle when you wave, but they're also the arms that hug people and held your babies and, you know, make food for your loved ones. And your legs, you might not like, you know, I don't like the freckling I'm getting, but that's the freckling my grandmother had. And she was the most beautiful human being on the planet.
Welcome to What I Meant to Say. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, founder of Be Better Media and a mom of 4, passionate about human connection. Throughout my journey, I have experienced many What I Meant to Say moments. But since life doesn't give us do-overs, I've created a space to reflect and tell our stories again, with a little more grace for ourselves and the hope that we can help others and be better for having listened. Welcome to What I Meant to Say. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, and I'm here today with Michelle Gillette, wellness entrepreneur and life coach, helping people improve their relationships with themselves and their lives. And we're going to talk about so much stuff that I'm interested in today. So I'm so excited to dig into this with you, because when we connected, what I love about this space is you connect with people that then connect you with people that you go, oh my gosh, we have so much in common. And everything I've looked at that you're interested in, I'm like, oh, me too. So
the alignment's amazing.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear your story and what that your life path that led you to today. And so let's just start there. Tell me a little bit about how you got into this business.
So I got into this business because both my son and then subsequently myself, we both had some just hit walls with our health. He ended up having from age 4 to 8 an undiagnosed condition that gave him severe OCD, and I kept wanting to go to, like, what's the root cause of this? I go to the doctors and they want to give him all this medication or behavioral therapy, and I was like, there's something else, because it happened overnight. And I found by doing research that I thought it was something called PANDAS, pediatric autoneuropsychiatric disorder associated with streptococcal. And sometimes somebody can get strep. It can cause an autoimmune disorder that, and in his case, it attacked his own brain. Severe OCD, like debilitating.
And you said overnight?
Overnight. And
how old was he?
He was 4. And his personality change went from the most just such high EQ, so confident, secure attachment style, just really like this gregarious kid, to so fearful that if he touched a pencil to his lip, he would go, am I going to get poisoned? Am I not going to get poisoned? And he couldn't stop the loop. Oh. So it's almost like a PTSD, night terrors. He didn't sleep through the night for 4 years. And then subsequently, either did I. I was up with him. And then I got sick. And we went to every specialist. We went everywhere. And we kept hitting this wall, and they just wanted to put a Band-Aid on it. And it didn't sit right with me. And a family friend finally just said, Michelle, you've got to keep trying. And I was financially, emotionally, physically depleted. I really wanted to punch him in the face, because I was, as a mom, so I was so exhausted. And I finally just, after he said that to me, I was mad, but I just went back to the doctor, a pediatrician who had 2 degrees from Harvard. And I said, please, I've asked you 3 times, just please check him for this thing called PANDAS. He goes, well, the research isn't that great. You're on the internet too much. And I said, yeah, but I'm reading PubMed. I'm not reading Reader's Digest or Cosmo. Yeah. Just test him. He tested him. He had 300 times more than he should, the titers and indicators for strep. And then my son went on 2 rounds of antibiotics, and everything went away. There's some neural pathways where he's got some 4 years of behavior kind of ingrained, right, but mostly just great. So there are people walking around with health issues, mental health issues, and it can be from a virus, it can be from bacteria, it can be from breathing in cat litter and getting toxoplasmosis. I mean, there's all these environmental things that can attack them, right, that they don't have any idea that it could be something physiological. We're only treating the emotional or the behavioral or the psychological. Right. So that sent me down, that huge rabbit hole. But then I actually started falling asleep at 2:00, driving my kids in the car, and I was exhausted, and I'd go to the doctor and I'd say, what's going on? They said, well, your hormones look normal, for your age. I was 42 at the time. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, well, that's wacky for 42. So, but that's not okay. That's not optimal. And I can't fall asleep driving my kids. I was losing my eyebrows. My face was getting puffy. I was gaining weight. So tired. And same thing, hit a wall. Here's some Prozac. I'm like, I'm not depressed. My life's great. There's something else going on. So I kept fighting. Thank God I had support, financial support. I had wherewithal mentally left, whatever was left. And I'm a fighter. And I've been a fighter since the womb,
Yeah.
which is a whole other story.
Okay.
And so I fought, and I finally went to somebody and said, I'm going to test you for Hashimoto's. And it was an autoimmune disease. Women go on average like 5 years, and see four doctors in 5 years, and hit the same wall, and they just try to put a Band-Aid on it. So when I got to the root cause, I got better, and I just thought that's where I need to focus, is root cause. So I'd had a big career in the hedge fund industry. I was the senior VP of a hedge fund. I loved it, and I stopped when I had kids, but I never lost that quest, that drive.
Yeah.
I'm not really naturally an alpha female type A, but I got a little taste of it and what I could get done, and so I brought it to health and wellness, and started out with mindset coaching, and loved it, and that helped me get through a lot of my own obstacles that I had. Mind shifting, and saw how powerful that was. A lot of work with Byron Katie, but I would hit a wall with clients when they would say, "Hey, I want to start this new business, but when I lose 10 pounds, or I'm really tired," and so we would go back into like the energy and why are you tired, and work backwards from there. So it was very organic how it happened. I'm passionate about it. I'm still passionate about it. My son is now 22. He just graduated from college, and he's thriving, and so he's a success story. And I got through my stuff too. Just a lot of it is through lifestyle. I did need medication, so I'm not against Western medicine when you need it.
Right.
And he needed antibiotics, so I'm not against that. Thank God he got them.
Yeah.
But now I think about, there's people who are just, going blind in Africa, and they needed some antibiotics.
Yeah.
There are people who are suffering so much. There are people are so filled with their own feeling of failure at failing at being happy, or failure at getting over their OCD, when sometimes there's a physiological reason. It can be mold, it can be metals, and all these other things. So that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But I have loved helping people find out and work with physicians. And as a functional medicine health coach and a brain health coach, I've led them to people who I believe in, and to lifestyle measures that I believe in, that I've used.
Yeah.
So it's through walking the walk, and like using my warrior spirit that I was lucky enough to have, that not everybody else has, and not every parent has that energy left. So that's what I've been doing. I'm shifting now into something else, which I'll tell you about, but that was the genesis of it, and it's been extremely rewarding.
Oh man, there's so much there to grab on
Yeah,
to.
I
First
talk
of
a lot.
all, no, not at all. I'm like, I see the alignment, and I mean, between trusting your intuition and being your own advocate, being a passionate mom, like when our kids are suffering, there is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm the same. I have 4, and there's not. I got into this space too, as well, trying to help my kids. So that resonates huge. But what I'm really, that root cause, that's the thing that really I'm so passionate about. And when you look at American life today, because we are band-aiding so many things.
Right.
And it'll never get you to your full potential, that optimization of people want to feel better. But when you put a Band-Aid on it, they're never going to get all the way where they can truly become what they want to become. Right. And you help people do that. If we can't connect with ourselves, we can't connect with other people, right? And I know you help people do that. So what are some of the ways that you help your clients develop a better relationship with themselves, so that they can have better relationships with others? It's
so much about self-compassion, and working through that idea that you have to be perfect and that you're not enough. There's the big ones, right? A lot of work with Byron Katie. That really, that helps a lot. Yeah. And also just letting them fall in love with their body, like how divinely made we are. Some people aren't religious, but whatever, higher source, whatever. I mean, we're amazing. And so when we partner with our body and we learn to love it instead of hate it, you can't hate yourself well. I've tried. I tried so many times. And it wasn't really until I had babies, that I saw my body as actually really functional. I thought it was decorative, and it was supposed to be decorative. And I was like, cool. I was even bulimic for 3 years in my late teens because of my idea of what I was supposed to look like. And I had so much stress that was the way that it manifested. Instead of becoming a drug addict and other things, it was that, right?
So control. And
And so I've already been through that self-hatred. I've done self-loathing. And what really worked for me was finally when I had kids and I nursed my son back to health. He was born with something going on. He was born a teeny bit early and had an infection, and he was in an incubator, and he was like small, and I nursed him back to health. And I thought, wow, everybody's like heating up the bottles, but these are heated. Like it's so easy. And the doctor's saying, well, don't let him sleep with you. And I'm like, but I'm going back to work in the morning, and this is just so much faster and loving, and I can't let him cry. It didn't feel natural to me to let him cry in his crib. Again, he's a really well-adjusted, amazing human being, having healthy relationships in the world. It didn't mess him up to sleep in my bed, and it was what I needed, and it was, I nursed him, and it was like, oh my God, they're not just decorative, they're functional, and you can do that. What else can my body do? And I fell in love with like the just intricacies and the body's fascinating. Self-healing is fascinating.
Yeah.
So that's really how, and so I help people see that, like, okay, your arms, maybe they jiggle when you wave, but they're also the arms that hug people and held your babies and, make food for your loved ones. And your legs, you might not like, I don't like the freckling I'm getting, but that's the freckling my grandmother had. And she was the most beautiful human being on the planet. And these legs walked me all over Europe and walked me on the beach, right? So
gratitude is so huge.
Yeah. So helping people just even going through what they do on a daily basis and to be grateful for their body and to want to treat it better, to fall in love with it and to really be grateful. So it's gratitude, self-compassion, gratitude. And then also talking just a little bit about the science of, we have this primal blueprint. And so rejection, for instance, it feels horrible. But once upon a time, rejection, if you're rejected from your tribe, you could die on the Serengeti if you were isolated from the group, right? And reminding them you're not really going to be left on the Serengeti because you don't live there, and you have a car, and you have food, and you have a job, like you have a home. You're not really, but it might feel like it, and you go, oh yeah, that's that old story that is our really wise bodies, but it's overreactive. So I think our body sometimes is very overreactive, almost like a overprotective mother, where it's going, wee wah, alert, and then going back and doing the mind shifting of like, is this true? Am I really in huge danger and I'm going to die now?
Yeah. I think when you learn to digest old pattern and see new pattern, right? And understand, like I do that in my life all the time now. I go, oh, that's old pattern.
Okay. That's a good one.
And okay, I see it. And it's that mindfulness, right? It's the ability to take a deep breath and realize it rather than just plowing through life, really quick. And that ability to be present. So there's so many ways that we can.
It's that awareness that you're talking about. And also you just said something. Even though I have all those tools, if you were born a certain way in a certain environment where your needs weren't met and you have early trauma, boy, you get too tired or you get sick or there's too much at once. I mean, I really feel like, gosh, I always say to people, it's not a drive-through car wash. Like you go through some programming and you're okay. I recently just had a lot of things kind of pile up at once. And I didn't react the way that I normally, as thoughtfully, as carefully in my communication. And someone pointed it out to me. So so taking care of ourselves, self-care is so essential. And it's not just essential for, it's not some selfish thing. It's actually, how are you going to be out in the world?
Yeah.
And what are you perpetuating out in the world? And, you can really implode. And you can implode your life if you're not doing the work. So it is like just saying, yes, most people have had some trauma in their life. Maybe I need to heal the trauma. Maybe I need to go back and do extra things. So when you ask, what do I help people do? I meet them where they are. Some are great with that. Some have super secure attachment style. Some have anxious attachment style. Some have a lot of anxiety. Some have great practices. But we come to this point where we go, okay, we know everyone really benefits from eating right. We know everyone really does benefit from finding some exercise. So it's going back to those things
work
right?
for you.
Yeah, whatever mindfulness practice works for you. It might not be sitting crisscross applesauce with a turban. It might be really like taking a walk on the beach.
Totally.
Me, I make little baby hats and it's very meditative.
I'm a lap swimmer.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't work for you. That is my, that's my zen.
Exactly.
Nobody can get to you.
Right?
It's quiet.
Rhythmic.
And then I learned about the diver's reflex, right? And so that is when you immerse the human body, when we immerse ourselves in water, people think that's usually would think that's a panicking thing, but we're wired to water calms us. And it's a way that we regulate our nervous systems. And when I read about that, I was like, my gosh, I felt like that since I was a kid.
Amazing.
I remember going under the water in the swimming pool and being like, I wish I didn't have to come up.
Does that work in a bathtub? Because I really like my Epsom salt bath.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm a huge believer. Yeah, for sure.
Wow, I'm going to go all the way. It is fun. And also it's silent, because I remember I got scuba certified when the last election happened.
Okay.
But 2019, right? That one. And I was like, it's so quiet under here. There's no news. So
Amen.
Right? It's so quiet under the water.
Yeah.
So helping people find, what are you passionate about? It doesn't have to be what your brother or sister or mom or dad are passionate about. It can be like, oh, is it just like listening to music? Isn't that
huge?
Yeah. So having a list and making a list of like, here are my go-tos when I need it. Breathing. I'm a breathing coach, so that's a huge one, right?
Yeah. And one of my favorite breathing techniques and where I've learned my breath work is they're through a Shift Adapt. It's Brian McKenzie and Emily Hightower. And one of their quotes is, your biology becomes your psychology.
Ooh.
And I just love. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's going to go on my Instagram page. I'll tag you.
Yeah, it clicked like that. I was like, oh my gosh. And you just, you mentioned attachment styles.
Yeah.
And that's something my 23-year-old daughter and I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And it's running, people are starting to talk about that a lot more. But for people who haven't heard about attachment styles, you want to
It's big. It's really big. Okay, so our attachment style, and I'm no expert on it, but I've lived it. I love it. I love how powerful it is, right?
It resonates.
There are people who I follow where I've learned a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And quite a bit. And it's, to me, really profound. So we are all formed, our attachment style, and our nervous system gets set up by how well our needs were met when we were babies. And their needs were met very beautifully. They were looked upon like, yes, your needs are met. If you're hungry, tired, I'm here. There's even like a type of voice you can have that has prosody. And Dr. Stephen Porges has studied this, the way we talk like a preschool teacher. That's very soothing to the nervous system. Like they feel seen, heard. And then that can create a secure attachment style. That's one type. Mm-hmm. Another one could be somebody who is inconsistent. A different nervous system is created from that, and a different attachment style of like, oh, sometimes things are met, sometimes they're not. That might show up later in a relationship, like needing a lot of reassurance or that kind of shift of like more insecurity, more anxiousness about that person. Are they going to come? Are they going to go
away? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then they go, and by the way, the secure attachment style is really a healthier. Yes, I ask for my needs to be met. And I can give love, I can receive love, and it's a safer kind of place to be.
Right.
And then there's this other one that is avoidant, and so they go through. There's 4 main ones, and I think everyone should go and look at it. And what you are in one relationship is not necessarily what you are in every relationship, because there are people who can activate, and you might be activated into anxiousness because somebody really isn't there for you. Like you might be really aware of somebody who's like a narcissist.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you are an anxious,
Right. You are responding to the condition of the relationship you're in.
Yes. And so it's just something for people to look at. And there's so much more to it. But the way that we were formed before, which is not to blame parents. Right. Some were young. Mine was young and getting a divorce and didn't want kids in the first place. Luckily I was brought into a home with my grandparents. So even though my dad wasn't around and my mom wasn't really ready to be a parent, my grandparents stepped in. So I got like a hybrid. And when I'm with somebody really safe, I'm good.
Yeah.
When I'm with somebody where there's too much, where I feel disempowered, or there's certain just things that will activate me if I don't, my intuition, you grow up really hyper vigilant if you don't have a really secure attachment style, because I lived in some danger. So I look for danger, and what you seek, you shall find. So, you can overstate that and self-sabotage, which is where managing our nervous system is really important. Mm-hmm. But anyways, these tools can be taught. There's people who are specialists in it, and it's not your fault if you're anxious. And it doesn't mean that, you're a horrible person in a relationship. It means that you might have a little extra learning to do and develop a practice.
Yeah.
So my practice just got kind of after getting divorced, it was like, wow, in an armchair, I can sit and tell everyone what to do. But in reality, our love relationships, I'm great with my friends. I'm great with work. But in a love relationship, when I finally get really close to someone, it might activate that fear again, right? Feeling love is like the other flip side of that beauty, and that pancake is like loss.
Yeah.
And that's in real life. Grandparents, even the safest love that I've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they get older.
Yeah.
You know, my childhood was plagued with running outside to see if the fire truck was going to their house, like, because they were my people, right?
Yeah.
So love is not for the faint of heart, right?
Right.
So you get into a love relationship, and all of a sudden, you know, somebody who had a childhood that was just amazing and perfect, they're like, yeah, everything turns out okay. They haven't suffered any big loss or whatever. But somebody who wasn't is like, is this going to stay? Is this permanent?
Yeah.
You know, and I had to come to terms recently that that love isn't permanent either, but neither is nature. The trees aren't, right?
Yeah.
Like, so let's let go of like it needing to be them with you forever.
Right.
Is
it good now?
Is it good now? Am I good today? So there's tools for all those things.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn them, and I've had to relearn them, and I'm relearning them.
Well, and
today.
different people, right?
Oh,
Different
yeah.
people teach you
Yeah.
different things. And yeah.
I will tell you the healthiest thing for me is somebody who is got like a calm,
Oh,
calm,
gosh, you and I are
kind,
on the same
right?
page.
Calm, kind, loving, and then I can be that person too, which is my favorite way to be. I don't want to go back into like, you know.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been thinking about this, having, you know, spent time with family. And again, I always say people do the best they can with what they know. And then it's our responsibility to know more, right? So we keep learning so that we can be better for ourselves and for our kids. And I love my family tremendously, but I realize now that it's your nervous system is like a collective nervous system of what your family, like I look at family systems, which is another really interesting part of psychology, but like how your family's nervous system is what you learn.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in essence, and I've been around that lately, and I realized, oh my gosh, I have a sign in my house that says cultivate calm.
That
Was like, I had it made for a friend who had this beautiful wooden sign company after my divorce, because I realized that's how I function the best. And that was how I wanted my home environment to be for my kids. But I never realized I didn't really come from that, because a lot of things from the outside looking in, you know, people say like there are big traumas in life. And what I have learned though is that we can't compare our traumas, right? And even if you're born like a highly sensitive person,
you're an HSP, 15% of us are,
And I've had conversations with my mom where she's like, you were screaming in your crib. I mean, I don't remember this, but I have always known, I've noticed, I've always taken in. And I didn't, it takes time to realize that this is how you're wired. And then how to meet those needs. And so part of my journey has been trying to create that for myself, which I have, and then create that for my kids. And when you look back and you see the difference between that environment of this is how they take in the world, and it's almost fear-based and waiting for the shoe to drop, and I can't live like that. Right?
Not funny,
but
not funny, but interesting.
Right, and yet you still I love my family, but at the same time it's that it's that evolution of, you know, if I want to function at my highest potential, this is how I need to, the choices I need to make to thrive. Right? And getting the right people around you, you won't know that until you get yourself to that space where you're like, oh, this is my sweet spot. And for me, calm is.
So when you are around, let's say your family or some other person who activates you or something, do you get tired? Do you get feisty? What happens to you?
I withdraw.
That's so.
My common. Kids will say, Mom, like your personality changes. Like I have a hard time, because what I've realized is like I won't fight for space. And you get in environments where everyone is, and it's a self-worth issue, right? Everyone's I love to contribute, but if you're in a situation where you feel like you're fighting for space, that's something where like my withdrawal now is more, I'm just going to pull back.
Because you're managing your energy too, right?
Which is so huge.
I get
so huge. And that's,
totally
I'm mom of 4, and I love what I do. I love helping other people, but sometimes you realize, I mean, you can only you can only help, like you have to live
Yes.
what you're helping.
One more person makes that oxygen mask analogy, but it is so true, right? Oh my God. We got to come up with another one. Like,
yeah, I know,
like,
right?
The bottle of water, you have to take your first sip.
Well,
like,
something. One of the things I've learned with my oldest, I feel like, she really went through this like parentification. Like she was doing stuff too young that because there were 3 other ones behind her and there was just a lot going on. And it's something now that like we work through together, but you realize what I was thinking this morning was you have to teach them to take care of themselves before they can take care of others.
Yes.
And it's the same goes for us.
I used to say to my kids in the car, you guys, it's like I start out the day with a glass of orange juice. And when you guys are fighting in the car in the morning, you're sipping a bunch of my juice. And if I pick you up from school and you're fighting again, there goes more juice. So if you think we're going to CPK tonight out to dinner and mom's juice is gone, we're having breakfast for dinner again.
Yeah, it's not.
Sometimes I would make, guess what we're having breakfast for dinner. And my son, who's older and so sweet, is like, yay. And my daughter would be like, you forgot to go to the store again.
Perspective.
And then so like, that's the other thing with your kids is they'll call you out on stuff. And so you're really like, when you have kids, you're also, see, for me, I had forgiven everything from my past, but then I had kids and I looked at them and I thought, oh, when I was my daughter's age, I wasn't loved and cared for like this. And then new perspective brought new pain, a lot of new pain.
Yeah.
And so my poor mom got like blindsided by new anger and pain and resentment.
Yeah.
And I didn't talk about it and whatever. Like,
it's hard.
So
Those are the hardest
right?
relationships to say what we need to say, right?
Yeah, and then we worked through that batch, and then she did some new stuff. One cousin was like, "Get over it." I'm like, "Oh no, it's the new stuff." Like, but it's all like, I don't want to hold on to any of it, really.
No.
But you also, we're all growing and learning and doing the best we can, and
Yeah, there's something that's hitting me that I've been thinking about lately. Maybe you have a perspective on this, but like people say that life is hard, and we're sitting here talking about challenges, and I do think life brings you challenges as a way that we can grow through them, right, and then help other people as we evolve. But there's also life is hard because we're making choices that make life harder. And that can be really frustrating to see, right? I mean, when you have a client, they're coming to you wanting to evolve. But there can be people in our lives that you're like, wow, you're just making choices and you're saying life is hard.
Yeah.
But do you have a distinction on like how to deal with people that when you observe, you're making this hard on yourself, and then it makes it hard on other people too?
So I have a little bit of a blind spot about it because I come from a family where there's drug addiction.
Okay.
And I also, both parents were suicidal. So the suicidal part, depression, I don't think that's anyone's fault. But I didn't understand for a long time that the compulsion to do drugs and the, men, drugs, whatever the thing was,
The addiction,
right? Whatever it was that was taking a parent away from me, and I was interpreting that as, you don't think I'm important, but you're choosing this thing. I didn't really understand the mechanism of addiction. So I was really, even as a kid, very unsympathetic to it. I just thought, get your shit together, because I really was having needs met somewhere else. And so I kind of came to understanding, I still don't understand it totally. Like I couldn't go teach an AA class or something, but I learned later. So if a client comes and, I'll refer out if somebody's got something that I can't handle in that capacity. So I don't really have the best answer other than enormous compassion for things like, how they got there, right? What is going into like the shame that they may be feeling from, somebody can not eat enough protein in the morning if they have the COMT gene, and their dopamine runs out too early. So then that's fascinating. There are people who go reach for something in the middle of the day because they need a bump up of dopamine, right? Now that poor kid has like, I failed at sobriety, right? Or, I'm addicted to porn or I'm whatever. I kind of feel like, honey, you needed protein, like there's and there's other but then sometimes bad behavior, or what is considered bad behavior, comes from the shame, and then that is insidious and it creates more. Like, okay, then you're on drugs and you go do something else, and then you feel shame about that, or you treat someone you love or whatever. So that rabbit hole, the only thing I can equate it to is when I was bulimic for 3 years, is the shame that I felt at that time. But I can look at myself and have so much self-compassion. This makes me cry still, because I hated myself for that. I was so embarrassed about it for years. But I can look at that girl now and go, okay, your dad killed himself. Your mom was on drugs. She was a functional addict. You had all these I had other threats, and it was just like, that's the worst that I did, is I wanted to, eat more pancakes. I'm like, okay, I forgive you for that. So I see people struggling, and it's from having been there. So it's compassion really is the way out for me. And I have compassion for my mother so much, and my dad who had a brain injury. So some of that is how I got into brain health. And,
absolutely.
So he killed himself when I was 13. So, it's from living it and loving people who are complicated that you can love other people who are complicated, and you don't need to fix them, but you can have some compassion for them. Some you can't have in your life, and it's not healthy for you to have them in your life, and you have to manage that too. But when it comes to clients, that's a different thing than family. And I will say I'm moving into this space more because there's emotional heft. I can't have clients that are suicidal. I did. And I've helped them. There's one who said, Michelle, you told me a story and I remembered it. And I thought, if you could get through that. It was a story I told him about being a teenager. And he said, I thought if you would. And if you could get through that. I got through my day and I didn't do it. And I was like, that is really meaningful work. And someday I'll tell that story, right? In a bigger platform, maybe. But it's really meaningful. But I was waking up at night a lot, worrying about people. And so I'm moving into a place that I really love, which is really food is thy medicine. So I'm moving into a place that's healthier for me because that's my self-care.
Yeah.
So
and it's sustainable, right?
We really need it. And like I said, protein, and some people need protein in the morning. They don't know. They're depressed. They've got they don't know why they've got these doldrums in the middle of the day. Food is so important. Food is thy medicine, and medicine is thy food. Hippocrates, way way long ago. This isn't brand new Mark Hyman stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Right? It's not from Huberman. It's way back. So,
mentioning some of my favorite people, but they are just drawing on ancient wisdom.
Oh, I quote both of them. They're all over my Instagram. So I am with you on that. That was a very long answer. My answer is I don't know how to help all of it, but I just have little things where I think compassion is important.
And I think that's actually a really good answer. And you can, that point that you made about being able to forgive and have compassion and then still keep a healthy distance when you know yourself and go, okay, this isn't for me, but that doesn't mean that I'm harboring, because harboring hate or resentment or any of those things, you might move through that resentment, but you have to move through it.
And the other part of that is what I am in, I may not, there are days when I don't have the capacity. I simply don't have the capacity to do the extra love and care and healing and forgiveness stuff. So those are days when it's better for me to go away and be away. Right? Is to know when I am filled with abundance and extra energy, right? Then I have the capacity, but I don't always have the capacity.
Right. That's something that's really interesting to tap into there, because you mentioned energy efficiency, you said you manage, and that's something I am very, very careful of these days, which I've learned, right? Because burnout is rampant. I've experienced it. I see it in the world. And one of my favorite interviews with Dr. Michael Gervais, he talks about the human energy crisis.
Really?
And I think you're hitting on something.
I want to watch that.
Yeah, it's interesting just because people, especially high-performing, hard-charging people, that we put this identity on ourselves, and we see ourselves a certain way. When you hit those days where you don't have the energy, how do you find that compassion for yourself to go, I need a break, I need a nap? So I think the work that Peter Crone does is really good about that, because we are not what we do. Those are a lot of that is our compensatory skills. Like I said in the beginning, I did not start out like an alpha female senior VP of a hedge fund who worked on the trading floor, one of the only women. I didn't start out that way. What I found was
I needed to make money. There was a lot of money. And I was like, I'm on my own here. I put myself through UCLA. I paid I was on my own. So I was like, oh, it just started because I have an art business, and the people who could afford the art were like on the stock market, or they were in pharmaceutical. And I was like, I'm not doing pharmaceutical, but I'll do this.
Beautiful. I love the creative.
Yeah. I was like,
I love the creative.
I can write, I can sell.
Market.
All right. Here
yeah.
So for me, that was me. It was fake it till you make it. And that became part of my personality. And I got such accolades for it. And I made a great amount of money. And my grandparents were proud. And they were like, what? Like, I was an art history major who became that. So, and that was that's not a normal trajectory.
No.
And I felt really proud of myself for that. Because nobody ever said go to college. Nobody ever even said, have you done your homework? Like I did that.
Yeah.
So I was proud of that. And I attached my identity to that. So then when I had kids and I didn't want to be that anymore, I was so fulfilled with motherhood that I was like, that's great too. I'm amazed by that. I didn't have any of the guilt of like working or not working. I just loved working, and then I loved being a mom. It was after they got older, that I was like, okay, let's rebrand and do something.
Yeah.
And then I went into my passion, which is what I do now. But I have to say that like what has been hard now is that I tapped into the beautiful, softer, more essential, authentic side of me that was making little cards when I was a little girl for people.
Yeah.
And my grandma would say, go play outside. And I'd go make a little house outside out of a dryer box. And I'd go make a living room outside. Like I'm learning to like nature now, but I was always a nesty kind of person. And I like people. I like to nurture people.
Yeah.
So how do I reconcile this alpha female go-getter that I don't really want to be as much of anymore because it wasn't real. It was effective. I had a lot of,
and I think as we get older, we find it's not sustainable, right?
No, I don't want to do that
it's
anymore.
not truly aligned with who you are.
Yeah, and I don't really like how I come off. I heard some feedback, and I saw some feedback. I even left a voicemail message the other day, and I played it back. I was like, gosh, that sounded more harsh than I meant for it to be.
Yeah.
I come off more harsh than I mean. My intentions are always, almost always good. Like I can't think of a time when it hasn't been.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come off that way. So I thought, oh, I loved the playfulness. Like,
God, I
so
love that
play,
awareness.
that playfulness of like being my kids and I are so goofy. That's when I'm happiest. When I sit across the table from someone and I talk about my kids, they go, God, you just lit up. Right? So that's
I see there are like 10 episodes that we can do. We hit like every single thing that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that too.
Isn't it funny when they're goofy and you're like, because play is a luxury.
Yes.
And we get to play in the luxury zone. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what tangent I'm on now, but something about.
No, well, how do we give ourselves permission for that? To love ourselves enough to take a break. To like as hard charging females or males or whatever. Like
it's so easy for me now that it got too easy, and now I'm making myself learn how to work again. I overcorrected after my divorce of like healing, and I needed it.
Right.
I shouldn't call it overcorrecting. But then I would say this summer I traveled way too much, and I'm like so excited about work, and now I'm ready to go back. I think it's just, going like this and being okay with that you're not going to be everything every day. Yeah. And we don't have to buy that bill of goods that was BS, that women can have it all the same. Like,
okay.
No.
Seriously. Because there's so much tension in the world on that right now.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what is feminism? What are strong females? What are men supposed to be doing? How are we? And it's like, so often I feel like everyone's looking at it from the way they're not being served. Yeah. Right? But how do we build that? Because even within one person, we have the masculine and the feminine, right? Yes. And you're talking about how you once you get to know yourself, and we have to compensate if something's not being served, and something that resentment can build up. Or
you've been the warrior, and that's what served you. You putting your boundaries up with your family or with people around your family or in business or who you're dating or whatever it is, like having with your kids, anybody, like that saved you. But now you're supposed to so what I'm learning is the communication of the boundaries can be done in this softer way that I'm relearning, maybe learning for the first time how to do. Yeah. That's it. It's like we can have our boundaries, but can we deliver it in a better way? Which my last relationship has really taught me I need to work on, honestly. Yeah. So
it can be a really
but it can also be like, you triggered me a lot. So both of it, right?
Yeah. And it's like you were saying, like everything's a learning experience. People come along for various reasons, right? And there's an experience there are things we learn. Yeah. And there's a ripple effect to that because it adds to your person for however your relationships takes you. Yeah. And when I went through my divorce, I really realized that my North Star is really generational healing. And it's like, because you look at, it was so profound to me how, oh my gosh, when you look back, you see things in people's stories that they didn't even know.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like, you know, different generations handled challenges differently. Like the past generation was sweep it under the rug. I think our generation's a lot more about, you know, talking things out, or, you know, being a little more like just braver with our stories. But it doesn't mean that they weren't doing things wrong. They were doing what they knew at the time. Right? So it's that evolution of, you know, that how we parent our kids is so much different, and they're going to be, you know, and sometimes there's overcorrection, right? And you see that a lot.
Right.
But I listen to the way you're talking about your kids, and that like the openness. It sounds like that it's an open, you have a real openness in the way that you communicate.
I love that you're saying that about overcompensating too, because Terry Real talks about grandiosity and how I think our generation is really feeding a lot of people with grandiosity. Like, here's your trophy for stepping on the field. You're great. But it's like, sometimes you have to keep it real with them too. Yeah. But you know, we have different ACEs score, the adverse childhood experiences, you know, and so in my family, I mean, I was a 9 out of 10. So the statistics for me being healthy are really low. So it's taken all this self-care that you're talking about. It's been mandatory. It's been mandatory. And then, so now my kids, you know, I have broken the cycle of alcoholism. I have broken the cycle of violence. I have broken the cycle of emotional abuse, and, you know, a few others. So it's a lot.
It gives me chills.
And
because that's the stuff, and everybody has it. So learning to let go of that shame, and the way that you can sit here and talk about it, I mean, shows such a huge depth of healing, right? And that it's I mean, I know. It's the first time I think I've ever said it without crying, to be honest. I'm finally like, okay, that is true. And it was because my grandmother, it was her softness and her gentleness that soothed my nervous system. It goes back to the nervous system. Always. Soothed my nervous system. And then my grandfather would like put me on his chest every night at 5:00, and I'd fall asleep. And I co-regulated with those two human beings who really did save my life. That's amazing.
And like the emotional component of my life, every part of it, right? And that's what I give to my kids, is that. And I still have days that are crappy.
Sure.
You know, my daughter will be like, you should hear yourself right now. I'm like, you know who you sound like, right? I'm like, yeah. You know. But
isn't it great and crazy to have kids that age that can be that honest with you?
Mine give me great advice. My son, because he does have the secure attachment and he's in a great relationship, he actually I watch him and I'll be like, oh, that's how you're supposed to do it? I'm so I tell him, I'm so proud of you.
I know. I just told my son that this weekend. We spent days, he and his girlfriend were on vacation with us. And after I told both of them, I go, it gives me so much joy to watch you two take care of each other and support each other. Not in this weird codependent, let me hang on to you way, but just this oh, I'm on your schedule. Oh, I'm on your schedule. And it just, I'm in awe.
I know. That's so funny. I just said that to my son at his graduation with his girlfriend. I go, you're so playful, and you just diffuse situations, and you're funny and affectionate. You're the best boyfriend. And, you know, and he was a little best son too, just cuddly. And then my daughter's just like this little badass. And she put my face in her hands one night in Wisconsin. And she's like, don't diminish yourself for anybody. And you're going to write your book, and you're going to help so many people. And you got to do it. And I admire you. And I know. I mean, it was like out of a movie, and I was like, I'm in awe of you, and I'm so lucky, you know. But that's my proudest. They're my best work. It's not any, you know.
Amen.
It's not anything happened at a hedge fund.
No.
It's on my deathbed, I'm gonna remember my hands and her face. My face in her hands. I remember my son and these little puppy piles we had on the bed with the dogs, and all that co-regulating that I learned when my poor grandma. She would have to kick me out of the bathroom because she'd try and take a bath, and I'd go in there. I was so attached to her. I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to sing the alphabet song so you don't fall asleep and drown.
Oh my God.
I would be like, I'm worried about you drowning. I used to call it drowning. Oh. And so, poor thing, she was taking care of me all day long.
20 minutes.
Yeah, and she's and she put a little washcloth over her breasts because she was very modest, and I'd be in there. A, B, C, D, hey, what happened? Like, yeah, like just,
child.
I know. And she's like,
Really?
oh my
Can
God.
I please?
Yeah, I just want to make sure you don't drown. She's like, oh, she could not get a break from me. I mean, and she just was so patient.
And
so,
how old were you when you went?
from 0 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah, my first 5 years, thank God.
Well,
Although those first 3 months weren't there. So there's, I'm a little fried on my myelin sheath has got like, can we have some duct tape or something on that? Like,
yeah, because it's insane how it's instant from the time we're born.
And I think there was some trauma in the womb. Like, I think it goes way back. So
yeah.
Wow. But we're, I'm really, this is what I say, no matter what happened, I love who I am. I don't love everything I do and say, but I love who I am and I love my kids. And so like, wow, I look at them and I go, okay, everything was worth it. Everything was, those people I always think, oh, BS that you wouldn't change a thing. But I'm kind of like, if it would change my kids at all, it's all okay. Like, I don't want to change anything, even the really hard stuff, because who knows what little.
Well, no life goes through. I remember thinking that because when you go through divorce, one of the hardest things is watching what it's doing to your kids.
Yeah.
Right? And I had this realization at some point that no matter how hard this is right now, every life is challenged at some point. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I didn't realize I was always waiting for the shoe to drop. Mm-hmm. I felt like, oh my, I've lived this charmed life. And what if something happens, I'm not going to be able to handle it. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned is, yes, I can, because I've been through a ton of difficult stuff now, but it's having that confidence that you can withstand the challenge and having them learn that younger. Yeah. All of a sudden, as hard as it was, I realized, okay, we're going to make this into a blessing. Yeah. Because they're going to be more resilient. They're going to be more compassionate. Yep. They're going to understand where people are coming from. Because it's sometimes when everything's been quote unquote perfect, which really we know doesn't exist, but you don't have that compassion for what people go through. Yeah. It's like muscles, right? Hormesis. You have to like stress out your muscle for it to grow, right? Yeah. And it's like, okay, that was your hormesis moment. I'm sorry about it, but also you're really capable. And wow, and look at you. I'm here and I'm grounded and I'm here for you, but you're also really capable. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, at this moment, I am safe. And oh gosh, isn't that a huge one? That's the other one. Like right this second, I'm safe. Oh, like kind of go back to that and do some breathing. Back to the breathing, right? Yeah, we have very similar. Similar patterns. We could probably talk a really long time. All the things that we've learned. Yeah. Well, the reason I started this show is just because I think there's so much generational wisdom that comes from hindsight. And when we're brave enough to look at where we've been and say, these are the things I've learned, and then, use those to help other people. And so there's so much of that in your story and what you're doing in the world. But the question I ask everybody, that comes on my show is, what's a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? Yeah. I used to phrase it, don't forget, because I would say to my kids, don't forget. And they'd say, what? Don't forget how much I love you. But I also need to say that to myself, right? Don't forget that you're valuable. Don't forget. But I recently changed it to remember. Remember who you are. Remember that you are valuable. Remember, I love that love. Switch to the positive. Yeah. Remember love, that you are love and you can give love. You can receive love. Like just remember that stuff. Like, and one day I'll say no, like be in your knowing, like, right. It's some days I know it and other days I have to remember it. And some days I have to say, hey, you who forgot it, like, don't forget it. Like, right. So it's a scale, but I'm trying to stick into remember your grandmother and how she was, and go be Dorothy's granddaughter. That's, that's a big one with me. Walk into that room, not with the narrative you got elsewhere. Yeah. Walk into the room as Tom and Dorothy Loris's granddaughter. That is so beautiful. It gives me chills. And the mark that makes for a matriarch, that totally. Concept of what we can instill in the next generation is so beautifully stated in what you just said. I love it. Thank you. And since I always ruin any mushy moment, I will have to say at some point I do need to stop talking about my dead grandmother. I keep saying, I swear I'm going to stop talking about my dead grandma. But that's the thing, though. Like, I'm not over her. And I think I will just love her forever. You should. Be grateful forever. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You don't need to stop talking about I don't know. I think some people are probably tired of it. They all know Dottie love. Not here. You don't have to stop talking about her. I love the generation. But if you're listening, Gramps, thank you again. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I want people to be able to know where to find you.
Yeah.
So that you can help them
Yeah.
cultivate all this beautiful things that you've done for yourself.
Along those lines of how important my grandparents were, I'm really into age positive work and longevity. And so go to my website. And so there's going to be a whole new section in there about longevity foods, longevity practices. I'm going to revamp the whole website by the time this airs. Will probably be done. So there'll be products, resources, all those, tons of links to people who are the people that I listen to and learn from, and programs, that type of thing. So that's MichelleGilletteCoaching.com. So there'll be a store, and you can go there, and that's really where the store resources, something like that. And that's where a lot of it will be. So on Instagram, I am Michelle Gillette _MICHELLE Gillette, like the razor _. And I put, really, that's the only place I've focused on doing short content. Almost every day I do something, and it's lifestyle, that kind of thing that I love and live. Yeah. And I share my mistakes. I'm not living it perfectly, and I don't expect anyone else to either. But
there's so much wisdom in that, and there's so much in the short form content. It's like the little things that go through our brains. It's just like a moment in a day, and I think I love that.
And that's where you can see a lot more about my dead grandmother.
Okay, I'm sure everybody will tune in for that.
Yeah, Dorothy. What's happening with Dorothy?
Because you're rocking it, and this has been so fun. And I know we could do follow-up episodes. So we're just gonna have to pick topics and go slow.
I know we should talk about something like mold, and then we would do it'd be shorter.
Yeah, I know, right?
Although not really.
Seriously, every rabbit hole is deep. So this has been so fun. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Really fun and easy.
Good.
I mean,
I know. Right? Well, thank you so much for joining us on What I Meant to Say today. And I'm Wendy Jones, just reminding you to be real, be you, and be better.
Yay!
That was so fun.
Thank you for joining us on What I Meant to Say, another production of Inspired Edutainment, brought to you by Be Better Media.